Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Bitcoin Bottom Line. I'm CJ Wilson with Josh Olszewicz, and we are coming to you from our secret bunkers across the country where we're safe from the ATF. No, I'm just kidding. Josh, we had just jumping right into it, we had a totally unknown party um, get, like, the founder got arrested and busted and stuff. So it's a Russian exchange called Bitslotto, and they only had like $11,000 in their custodial wallets. So I'm not sure. Did you hear anything about this? Everyone thought there was going to be a big announcement,
Well,
that they were.
there was an announcement of an announcement that they were going
Yeah.
to make an announcement, and like the DOJ was there, the OFAC people were there, the New York Fed was there, and then they announced this exchange that not many people had heard of, including myself. I'd never seen them anywhere about anything, right? No, like chain analysis with Bitslotto, no mentions of them from any traders.
Hmm.
So maybe it was just a front all along. Maybe it wasn't actually an exchange. I don't really know, but they were involved with Hydra apparently, which was a Russian darknet market.
Mm.
So I don't. Yeah, I'm. That's not my world, so I don't really know. Surprisingly, I'm not a part of the Russian DNM, so I don't really know much about that. But
Just because you have a Z in your name somewhere doesn't mean that you have anything to do with what's going on across the Atlantic. So here's the interesting thing for me, right? So Bitslotto, like you said, never heard of it. I've never heard of it. I've used a bunch of different exchanges over the years to
yeah,
buy and sell and stuff like that. Um, what I am a little bit concerned with, though, is that similar to the Tornado Cash situation where they arrested the guy that was the programmer or head dev for Tornado Cash,
yeah.
it's almost like this is a bad precedent in from a libertarian freedom standpoint in that angle on Bitcoin. It does concern me a little bit that if there was, I mean, this is not necessarily a Bitcoin related thing, but it's almost like, you know, the government agencies go after things that are broken because they can't defend themselves, right? If you see what happened with Ripple over the last couple of years, Ripple has been so well funded to be able to try to defend themselves with lawyers and lawyers and lawyers and lawyers. And some of these other people that they've gone after recently haven't been able to defend themselves because they had no resources. So I kind of wonder if they're just sort of like going to spring training right now and kind of getting warmed up. And that's what they're trying to do. Because obviously there is a segment of the government in general that is punitive and is looking to punish bad actors. There's also people that are punitive and looking to punish people that don't want to be part of the system. So I think that's where it's like, is this a political thing to like do something and see if it reacts? Obviously, the market reacted. We've been kind of cruising since we came off the bottom. It's been a couple weeks or whatever,
I mean, the
but
timing was perfect though. From a TA perspective, like we had a bearish divergence, we had a rising wedge. Like these are classic reversal type
right.
structures and patterns. So, and then I was like, oh man, we're getting this announcement. This timing is great. Like this is a slam dunk.
Yes, yeah, exactly. So then you see some bids pull out of the market, right? You
Yeah,
see some people just sell,
people
take
risk
profit,
off. Yep,
yeah,
yep.
risk off, and they kind of come away from it. And now all of a sudden, the price drops. I mean, it dropped down maybe what, $800 or something like that. So it wasn't like a tremendous move, but it was kind of straight down, which shows to me that people are still paying attention to the news and correlating news events to prices and risk prices and stuff like that.
Well, it was signaled as such like a major deal, right? Again, like it was an announcement of an announcement, and then it was like, who? Like,
Right. It's like, hey, we got this guy. There's been this big shoplifting problem in the Bay Area. There's this ring of people that are, breaking into CVS's and stuff. And they're like, we pulled over this 16-year-old kid and he had, 3 bags of batteries and like a Powerade, and we got him. We got him, guys.
yeah, yeah.
It's like that's not the ringleader of whatever you're working on. But during the last couple, let's say, couple weeks or whatever, where we were sort of stagnating in the $16,000 range, there was a big buyer, right? We had somebody that was kind of formulaically buying a lot of Bitcoin. You were talking about this in the pre-show. There was fundamentals that were showing that, hey, there was assets coming off the exchanges. There was people buying. We have the shrimps. More people getting close to having a full Bitcoin now. The DCA army, the stuff like that. So what was it that you were seeing outside of maybe that one guy, that one address that kept accumulating Bitcoin periodically? I was like $4 or $5 billion worth of Bitcoin that somebody bought. Is that correct? Is that the right number?
Yeah, I hadn't heard that number specifically, but anytime you see like day over day rises like we did,
Mm-hmm.
if you're looking at like the candlesticks specifically, and you
Uh-huh.
see every daily close is pushed, in this case it's like 8 p.m. EST, whatever metric you're looking at, because I know
Right.
that changes around the world. But when you see just continuous rising like that, it typically means that somebody is being very aggressive entering, and
Mm-hmm.
that appeared to be the case. Either they're T-wapping or they're V-wapping, meaning they're buying no matter what, right? Over time, slowly they're accumulating. It's one way to accumulate a large position without moving the market too much.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and in this individual's case, or whoever this may be, it certainly worked in their favor. That it went higher after that. I did see
Right.
some theories that maybe it's some stablecoin who didn't have the money in their reserves. Maybe it's Binance who did, all this stuff, right? It's always like there always has to be a reason. People assume that there always has to be a reason. It's like, no, maybe there was just a buyer that day and there wasn't a seller, like
Yeah. Well, and I think one of the things I saw yesterday on Twitter was that there was a comment that Peter Thiel had exited a
mm,
big part of his crypto, and they specifically say crypto, not Bitcoin. So I'm not sure if he had other bags, but just in general, like that he was selling Bitcoin or crypto at when Bitcoin was at 44,000. So theoretically, somebody like that, that's a big capital allocator, he could have gotten out of a big position in the 40s, 30s, whatever, and then started reaccumulating, saying, hey, maybe this is the bottom and this is a good time to buy back in, which is the classic like whale trader behavior, right? If you believe in Bitcoin long term, then you sell it knowing that you're going to buy it back later, and you're kind of okay with that risk of price action in between. Uh, that's one of the ways that I trade, is try to say, okay, there's an intraday high, there's a small risk that I'm going to sell it. It's for my mining revenues or whatever. If I might sell something, I'm going to try to buy it back, with the indication that I might not be able to buy it back at a lower price, but it gives me the price certainty of an exit to say, okay, I don't have to pay electrical bills this month, so then I can sell $1,000 worth or whatever. Um,
yeah. Back to
but
that
yeah.
exit though, in March, it was March 2022, and if you look at the chart during that period, at least that's when he says he reportedly got out. And based on what we can see, I believe him, because it
Mhm.
looks like it was kind of a fight between the Luna emergency fund, whatever that was, with Bitcoin
Mhm.
buying, and then Peter Thiel potentially in that fund selling, because that period was like a week of, a couple weeks really, of just straight up, straight down, like
Mhm.
44 to 37, just crazy volatility in that time period. But so that makes sense based on the price chart anyway.
I think the difference is that unlike other assets, let's say like an IBM stock or Microsoft or something like that, like a traditional, let's say blue chip Dow Jones type stock or a Nasdaq stock, that's like a kind of core thing for a lot of people. Uh, you accumulate a certain position in a stock like that, and if it could be a super high market cap company, then all of a sudden you get offered like a board seat, right? There's not the same type of thing that happens in Bitcoin. So somebody like Saylor or Peter Thiel or Elon Musk or whatever buys a you know 9-figure sum of it or 8-figure sum of it or something like that. It doesn't necessarily give you any special rights, so it's just sort of happens, and we can sort of identify certain things. But this concept of the conspiracy driving the purchase is so much more juicy and fun to talk about, right? It's like there's always this thing that in racing, at least, right here I got my race helmets back
You
there.
already used a baseball metaphor. You're running out of
No, I
running
got
out of
it.
room here.
There's a term saying that yellows breed yellows, meaning like yellow flags, like cautions and stuff like that. They breed more cautions. So if you have a situation that's volatile, let's say there's rain in the race or something like that, someone crashes, gets stuck in the dirt, they have to yank him out. Everyone's getting like pent up and like freaking out. And then the second they turn it back to green flag again, somebody makes a stupid move because they've been like, raged out. So I think what's happened is the Bitcoin people, especially Bitcoin Twitter, is so conditioned to be skeptical of everybody big. The whole kill your heroes thing, don't meet your heroes, kill your heroes thing. So the second that there's like, oh, there might be this announcement or there might be this thing or whatever, everyone's like, this is it. Binance is going down or whatever. And it's like, well, or Coinbase is going to die. It's like, okay, it's that like doesn't have to be the case. Some of these exchanges are actually better run businesses than others, regardless of
Right.
like how well they're run. There's
Yeah.
a tier, and it's like with I know what it seems like in crypto. broadly, especially with Bitcoin, is whoever can hang on the longest will reap the rewards of being the provider of last resort, whether that's the wallet provider, the exchange provider, or something like that. Or in this next case, the biggest pleb and tradfi like seam in the crypto space, which is GBTC, right? So now we're at this thing where there's like this big public debate. It's all this dirty laundry is getting aired out there, and we see people that are like, "Hey, maybe we can push this thing through." I have no idea how that works. I think I had some GBTC a little bit. I sold it. I'm seeing this sort of like commentary about a hostile takeover or something like that. Is that even possible with the scale that Grayscale is at right now? That people could pleb up and get together and vote him out and vote somebody else in to control that big pile of Bitcoin?
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of Segwit 2x, you know, going back to Barry and what he did for Segwit 2x versus Segwit back in the day. It's like this like, you know, revolt by the shareholders who are basically saying, look, the fees are too high. We can't exit this fund, right? They can't sell their holdings effectively. So the holders have risen up and said, do something. We're going to find somebody who is willing to do something, basically.
Yeah.
So it's still early, and you know all this going on with Genesis, and now CoinDesk is in the mix with as far as potential sale. Grayscale, obviously, it's just it's hard to really know what's going on there and who did what when, and you know they earn a bunch of money, and it's just really really messy.
What seems to me that the way that this generation, I'm including us in this mix, our generation of Bitcoin people, exchange people, crypto people, whatever you want to call it, the immediate reaction is, I'm taking this to Twitter. And one of the Winklevinis posted a letter, an open letter. They're like, hey, open letter to Barry, open letter to Grayscale. And I'm just sitting here thinking, and this is like in the wake of Sam Bankman-Fried just blasting all this crap about himself and all this, oh, I have my feelings and I'm vegan and I like cats and beanbags and whatever. And all this stuff is out there. It's like all the dirty laundry is just flaunted in the air. And that seems like a very different situation versus a couple of years ago where, you know, when something of this scale happened, it was a massive corporate problem that was, well, it's kind of swept under the rug, or it was a courtroom drama, you know, before anybody heard anything about it. Now it's like the second there's any whiff of something stale or off, then these people are literally taking it to the streets, John Cusack style, from Say Anything, and they're like, this is the deal,
They
Barry.
got the torches, they got the pitchforks.
Torches, pitchforks, and boomboxes right out of the gate. And I mean,
well, it didn't start there. You know, the discount has progressively gotten worse and worse and worse. At one point, it hits negative 60%. It's around 55 time of recording, but it's like enough's enough, right? And they're still collecting fees on the product.
A high percentage of fees, like
extremely high relative to other products. You know, at the time when GBTC came out, it was the only game in town. That's changed. There are plenty of other products available that don't charge those fees, that maybe don't have the connectivity that GBTC has from a, like, you know, trader brokerage perspective. But yeah, I don't know. The story's still being written there.
Right.
I hope that they get out of it cleanly and figure stuff out, and the shareholders get.
There's a lot of shareholders. That's the difference here. There's a lot of shareholders. This isn't like, oh, we feel really bad for Mark Cuban because he lost money or something like that. This is like a lot of people are caught in the crosshairs on this one, and in a lot of ways, it's still very much a gray area for what the best case scenario is. I guess it's not like there's not like a cut and dry thing to say, oh, this is the best case scenario, this is going to happen, you know. And I think that's where it seems like there are, I don't know, like I said, yellows breed yellows, right? There's a bunch of caution and a bunch of things smashed up over the last 12 months, and there's going to continually be some more smashing up of things and blending of fingers in the blender. And
well, the good
like
news
that.
is, unlike Segwit 2x, where that was like a fundamental governance debate within Bitcoin, this is like this is Bitcoin price, this is custody, this is
Mhm.
rehypothecation potentially, but it has nothing to do with the network Bitcoin, right? It's just the tradable asset or custody, or so I'm not worried about it in that sense. It's more or less like worst case scenario is they close the trust, they dump all the Bitcoin. I don't think that'll happen in a million years,
Mhm.
but that is the worst case scenario.
Well, and the
Uh,
longer they can hold on to as much of it as possible, the more they're collecting in revenue, which means they can pay their lawyers and, pay other things off. If they can wind it down slowly, if they can figure out a way to redeem it at a certain velocity, then the good part about that is then all those people that have GBTC, that some of them might not even have any exposure to self-custody Bitcoin, if those people were able to actually self-custody, and this is one of the billboards for self-custody, right, is this situation where the Bitcoin's gone into to the trust, and there's no one to really get it out, and that it's negative at that point. um
yeah, it's messy because there are tax implications for people who don't want cash redemptions. People want in-kind redemptions.
right,
There's I would love to have everybody self custody, but the reality is that's just not what people want to do.
right.
Um,
We're so close though on some of these people talking. I see some of these people and they're like, oh, this is broken, this is that. It's like Bitcoin fixes this, right? That's the
well, there people
classic
talk
feeling.
about it like self custody is like this active thing that you actively do, and I
Hmm.
see it so much as like it's just out of sight, out of mind, passively.
Yeah.
You have your thing, you do your thing. This is your security.
Yep.
That's it, right? I know it works. It's always worked. Doesn't mean it'll always work in the future, but I'm confident that it's fine. So um, I don't know where I was going with this, but
Well, so the with despite all this, the volatility is still pretty low. We're still at a low volatility from a traditional Bitcoin sense. Um,
price wise, we've erased the entirety of post FTX collapse.
right.
Not necessarily, the cause from 65 to 15.
Hmm.
That was definitely FTX was a part of that. But just as far as the news cycle goes, at the beginning of November to now, price is back to where it was. So
But the chest hair on everybody that hodled through that dip, right? The chest hair on everybody that bought the dip, that bought more Bitcoin at 15 or 16 grand or whatever. They're feeling pretty good about themselves right now, right? So there's some metrics suggesting that there's a certain amount of people that are back in profit on their net holdings, right? Because if we're above 21, then we're still above the 2017, 2018 cycle. And so there's people that now we're back to that thing that if you've held it long enough, you're good, you know? But I think the big story for the rest of this year is when do we start the countdown to the halvening? And I think we're under 70,000 blocks now.
well, as a
So,
miner yourself,
yep.
are you looking forward to the happening?
Yeah, to a degree, because I feel like this is where, people will hang on and they'll continue to mine past the halvening until they get to a point similar to a couple months ago where they just couldn't get electricity price low enough to stay online, and that will create a capitulation issue. Uh, and then there will be there's a churn in mining, right? You have these big publics, they draw on loans and all this other stuff. They create this massive structure, this massive, exahash worth of mining equipment, electricity bills, transformers and equipment and stuff like that. But if they don't execute and they fail, then all that stuff gets puked back into the market, which benefits smaller people that are sort of accumulating more in the survival rat mode, like I am. And the thing that if you've this is my first real, let's say, bear market as a miner. I've been through bear markets as a Bitcoiner, but bear market as a miner. um Now I feel like I'm armed with a lot more skills, and also just maybe not so moon boy about it, to say that we have to sort of sell stuff, we have to be disciplined with our trades, we have to be disciplined with our purchases. And the biggest problem like we encountered was we bought all this equipment that didn't show up for a long time. We bought these, S19 140 terahash units, the XPs or whatever, And it's like we waited on them forever and ever and ever. And now that they're in, holy crap, they're yielding. It's great. They're what an investment. But if I was able to have bought those things for like 5,000 versus admittedly paying 12 or 13,000 for some of them, that sucks. Now, granted, the majority of stuff that we've been buying has been more recently. So we've been buying stuff way under.
Average down, basically.
Yeah, we've averaged down, and so now we're probably in the. I'm trying to think of dollars per terahash, or something like that, like as a metric. But it's basically the stuff that was $10,000 a year ago, or maybe even 18 months ago, is now a lot cheaper. I mean, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 for that same machine. So granted, the Bitcoin price is also down 25%, but that metric works fine if you have cheap enough electricity. You can just keep deploying more equipment and kind of go. I think that the crux of mining is there's so many people that want to lend you money, and you have to figure out a way to do it with very little lending, very little borrowing, because that adds another layer of cost, and it's really never going to be that juicy of a business.
And it's leverage, right?
Yeah, it's just this leverage, which has a way of flushing you out and dragging you down. And the loan, like there's people sending me stuff all the time. Hey, we'll give you a loan, 15%, 16% loans. It's like, yeah, I don't really think that's a great deal, because we're at a position right now with mining where I want to say like it was down to like 5.5 cents. If you were paying more than 5.5 cents, like you weren't making money.
Well, that was those, you were getting off at those rates when interest rate in the US was like zero, right? Like the rates were still high, but now
right,
US rates are close to
5%.
5.
Yeah.
And the average consumer credit card rate is 19%.
Right.
So I can't even imagine what those mining loans are like APR wise now, because they must be just.
Yeah, and they're like 12 to 18 month payback periods and stuff like that. So basically the whole first year you're just slamming all the money back to pay off the equipment.
Yeah.
So I think, there's this like really good debate that you can get into with hardcore Bitcoin people, which is to say, hey, let people mine if they want to, but at the end of the day, buying Bitcoin is easier. It's more direct, and if you would have bought this much Bitcoin at that time, like if you had $20,000 to buy Bitcoin, you might have only been able to buy half a Bitcoin. That would have been 2 mining machines. Okay, but it's like now that's 5-6 mining machines, you know what I mean? And then that's 1.2 Bitcoin. So ultimately, if you dollar cost average your entries to the asset or the productive assets, meaning the miners that generate the Bitcoin, you're probably better off than if you quote YOLO into it, because that's not strategic. And Bitcoin is a very complex strategy.
The cruel mistress.
It's a very cruel, strategy thing. And the only thing you can predictively say is that there's going to be a new block in a couple minutes, and you want to try to get as many as possible. But I think it's hard because it's not as easy to hold the Bitcoin that you make as you think it is. And sometimes it's better to have like a gig economy job that you just pile all that money into Bitcoin, or you have some sort of part of your salary that you stay disciplined at and you acquire Bitcoin that way. Because honestly, mining is really tough. And I would tell people that, unless you have a certain amount of risk capital, in a time horizon of maybe 4 to 5 years, I used to say it was like 18 to 24 months, but now I think it's more like 4 to 5 years before you really even know if you deployed a good strategy or not. Because
we have to time the price cycle like very well. You have
Yeah.
to time the energy market. You have to time hash rate and difficulty, right? Or you have to time, like you said, the forward deployment of your ASICs. Like there's so much variability there that any one of those things, and then adding on leverage and loans, like it's too easy to get completely wrecked.
Right. And that's why, it's a very cute business model. It's a cute sales deck or whatever, but the sort of the retail mining thing, to say, oh, hey, give us $15,000 and we'll get you a couple miners, and I'm not going to name any of the names because I'm not trying to say anything bad about those companies, because some of them are run better than others and some of them are not run that bad. And there's been people accusing some of these companies of all this BS, and it's turned out to sort of be okay. So sometimes, right? Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. it's just going to consistently be a mixed bag. It's going to be chaos. It's not predictive. It's not simple. It is easier to spend the $167 a month to buy Bitcoin than it is to pay the hosting fee with the Bitcoin you mine.
Yeah.
That's just effectively the way to do it. So at the end of the year, right now, that's about what it costs to run an S19 at most of these like hosted sites. It's about 150, 180 bucks a month. So let's just say $175 a month, right? So if it's $175 a month over the course of, a year, it's like, okay, so what are you going to have spent $2,000 or something like that? If you would have bought $2,000 worth of Bitcoin over that period of time, how much Bitcoin will you have at the end of the year? That's really the market. That's really what it comes down to. And
Are you beating the index effectively, which is just
yeah,
buy and hold, right?
right. Are you beating the index, the buy and hold HODL index? And are you sleeping better at night because you do one or the other, right? And you can do
Yeah.
both. If you have like a big salary or something and you say, oh, I want to spend $2,000 a month buying Bitcoin and $2,000 a month mining Bitcoin, then you can totally do that too. It's your risk, it's your capital, it's whatever you want to do. If you feel like you're securing the network and that's your duty to do, I don't know, whatever. But I think the people that are really going to do the best with mining are the people that are going to use it as a heat source to do these other projects, like we talked about Troy Cross, about whether it's water issues or methane issues or something like that. I think that's where the mining thing is going to really kind of find its niche and stay there, and then kind of grow roots. Because I think the retail warehouse mining and having 1,000 clients and you have to send them all an email, that's it's kind of weird.
Well,
But
what's odd here, this like price cycle, is even though price is down like, I don't know, 50% from highs, hash rate just hit an all-time high. So miners are continually just being punished. The inefficient ones, anyway, are just continually being hammered with these headwinds where their profitability is just declining, right? If you're not efficient, and it's just extremely cutthroat, very Darwinian, survival of the fittest. You know, it's a tough business.
it's pure capitalism, dog eat dog, meritocracy. That's what it is. There's no nepotism in Bitcoin mining. You can't, other than maybe getting permits faster than somebody else. If you're going to build infrastructure at scale, it's like it's a big lift, and so I think that's where
And that's great for the network, right? Great for the network.
it's great for the network.
Not so great if you're a business
Yeah,
some of
and
the time, right?
I wonder also, like, how much money does What's Miner really make? How much money does Bitmain really make? How much are they
The
really?
shovel sellers.
Yeah, exactly. They're selling us the shovels so that we can go dig and get frostbite on our fingers looking for gold, right?
Yeah.
And I think you know there's a lot of talk about Microsoft entering that, and they're going to build ASIC chips and stuff like that, and I think that's it's interesting. I don't know if that's going to make the market any better or worse, but power costs are not going to go down, so it really is going to turn into more of a fight for the power sources. And then can you create an ancillary business selling the waste heat to something else to purify water or whatever else there is, right? If you can create that second or third layer, then that effectively acts as a load reducing demand response, like you do in ERCOT, so that if the price of electricity is higher and it's more profitable than mining Bitcoin, you turn off and you sell the electricity capacity back. And that's a smarter grid system. It's more real time. It's going to require people that are super gacked on caffeine to be paying attention to charts and wind patterns and
Well, I
weather
just saw
patterns.
out of New Hampshire, Sununu, I think he's still New Hampshire, released a paper about using Bitcoin to shore up the grid. And so there are positives coming out of government and regulatory, not just like the negative stuff in New York. Texas
Yeah.
as well is continually showing that this stuff works if the miners play ball with the grid,
Mhm.
and there are more. They seem to be more than willing to do so. It's in their own interest to do so. So it's all headed in the right direction, at least in the United States.
I feel really good about 2023 from everything Bitcoin. I mean, realistically, we've got a new cast of people, new cast of characters to deal with in DC. A lot of new people there. They seem to be, more open to having more meetings and having more learning based discussions as opposed to like political discussions, which I don't think are very effective. Um, and I think like with the narrative of lockdowns and the narrative of control and people resisting what they're hearing from the WEF or something like that, there's just more awakenings and more awareness going on. People are sort of standing up for themselves a little bit more today. I think Twitter's better than it was a year ago. I think that a lot of these other things are going to help, and there's more people like us that are just providing free opinions, which someone might jive with or they might disagree with. But ultimately, the more you hear about this stuff, the more you become galvanized to it somehow, right? And the people that are like the guy on Rogan the other day, the thought leader guy that everyone calls a spook. He's like, oh yeah, Bitcoin's at 16 grand. It's going to go down, to zero because of this, and that. Like deflationary currency doesn't work. And it's like everybody, like you don't even have to chime into that thing. There's already people dunking on him. There's already people
Yeah.
saying this guy's just trying to psyop us all. He's a CIA spook. He's against us. He's against freedom. And it's crazy because that fervent stand up for yourself renaissance, that sort of, I don't know, like I hate to use the word libertarianism, but it's like I can't think of another way to say it. But just that independence that people are seeking now, the freedom. It's like, we're seeing that renaissance in Bitcoin of people coming to it from that, not even from a pricing standpoint or like a moon standpoint or anything, but just like, oh, these guys are getting locked out of their bank accounts. Like, we need Bitcoin. It's like,
Well, I just
yes,
saw today, speaking of bank accounts, Bank of America had some issues with
Zell.
balances.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which you may be aware of. I don't know. But yeah, people are like, wait, what's going on? Right? Like, some people saying maybe there's a better way. Oh, there is a better way. Let's take a look. Right? Oh, here
Right.
we
And then
are.
people will start to reevaluate, wait, how many fees am I paying? Because if this is what could happen, if I could get rugged like this from Bank of America and Zelle, well, then maybe it is worth risking running these transactions through Cash App or Strike or something or even really going all the way with like Blue Wallet or Moon Wallet or something like that, where they're doing actual Lightning payments on an actual Lightning wallet. So that's the best teaching opportunity we have, is to go to these people and say, hey, listen, I saw you were upset about your Zelle. Okay. Let me explain that there's something that works better than that and it's cheaper. And they're like, cheaper? I thought this was really cheap. And you're like, yeah, $17 to do a transaction? No, that's not cheap. So I think, PayPal was a precursor and Strike is a better program, right? Or Cash App's a better program or whatever. And I don't own shares in either of these things. I just happen to use them because I like the way they work. And I think
Mhm.
that sort of meritocracy again is what's going to benefit the most people. And that's how you get more Bitcoiners, because they're going to decide to trust the Bitcoin network ahead of trusting Bank of America. We know that every institution that's run by a person is fallible. Know that. Historically, every religion says this. Even the atheists know this, that you can't trust people with all the cool toys, because they will decide oh, it's my toy at some point, right? And you
Yeah.
can't give, even the cutest little kindergartner will yank a teddy bear out of another kindergartner's hands. So why would we want to give them our life savings, or
Yeah.
our actual cash flow? So like the lady that comes and cleans our house, she uses Zelle. And I told her, I said, listen, I'm not going to pay you in Zelle anymore. I've been trying to get you off Zelle. And she's like, I heard this thing. I'm like, I'm worried about my bank account. I'm like, yeah, exactly. Like, we're going to use Cash App. We're going to use Strike. We're going to use something else. And I'm just going to slowly orange pill her like 5 minutes a day, over the course of a couple months and get her to that point. So I'm going to try
Just
to
drip it into her ear.
yeah, drip it and then say like, hey, listen, once you have this, and you can have a card, so you can
Yeah.
swipe it as debit
Yeah.
card and all that stuff. It's still normal. Still live your normal life with these things. It's like, oh wow, there is another way. And it's like, yes, Bitcoin can be the backbone for all these different financial transactions, and that's what we wanted. That's why we joined, the sort of Bitcoin team or whatever.
Three
But I
quick
think,
things before we wrap up.
yeah.
Cash App, this was years ago. Dorsey said that the number one use was Walmart. So to him, that indicated like the unbanked and underbanked are using it as a bank account, which I think is pretty clear.
Hmm.
And that also means that they are more adjacent to like the Bitcoin ecosystem, roughly, because they're already in Cash App, right? So
Yep.
they're somewhat exposed to that. Um, which is interesting when you think about like who could benefit the most, right? Is like the unbanked and underbanked.
Hmm.
The second thing is I just did a Venmo transaction yesterday for the first time in a long time, and I had no idea that it's still public. Like
Ah,
everything, like I could see the entire previous transaction log. I was like, "What? Is this real?" Like
yeah.
it's so bizarre to me. I know
They
that in
don't,
Bitcoin, it's
they don't even do the benefit of obfuscating it with like some random
no,
address. It's like Sarah sent
yeah,
Tim, $14, like sandwiches emoji,
yeah. I just don't understand why that's okay. But I know Bitcoin's public and addresses are whatever. But I don't know. I was just like blown away by that. And then the last thing, I got a haircut and the place didn't take tips on a credit card. So I had to send a tip via Venmo. Um, that's the Venmo thing. And I didn't have time to like talk to the guy about like, Cash App or Lightning, right? But I wanted to. I want to go back and say like, hey, there's a better way, right?
Yeah. Well, and
um,
I think Cash App's actually doing a point of sale terminal now too. So you can actually have a point of sale terminal, so you can do the QR code right there. And I mean, all of it, what it comes down to is, and there's always fluff about, oh, Visa's going to they're going to partner with this, or MasterCard's going to partner with this, or whatever. But like the whole point of these things, you know, the point of these apps that we use, the Bitcoin native apps, and it's supposed to function as digital cash, right? Micropayments, uh, easy day-to-day stuff, stuff that you're not necessarily using credit. You're not trying to delay the payment. You're trying to settle right now.
right.
Taxi ride, haircut,
And I don't even have Venmo. So like,
right?
just let me do Lightning.
Yeah,
It's just
exactly.
cleaner.
We're getting there though. Just think about it. Like the conversations a couple years ago were like, oh, isn't Bitcoin only for criminals? Now they're like, oh wait, why would I want to pay 3% fees with Visa when I could just use Bitcoin instead? And you're like, yeah, there you go. Like now you get it. Because it's those little bits that count, just like DCA. It's the people that make efficiency changes in their life, whether that's to be a marathon runner or a dentist or whatever. It's like if you get one extra patient a day as a dentist, right? That's the mentality I think that Bitcoin gets you into, is to say, okay, I need to be efficient, because every dollar and every minute that I can earn a dollar, that counts for something, and we're seeing the devaluation of wages, the devaluation of people, because the wages that they earn aren't adequate a year later, and I think
One
that's,
last thing that you just
yeah.
reminded me. I saw this headline about Argentina, and the devaluation there is so extreme that the banks don't have the vault space to hold the physical fiat. They're running out of vault space.
The vault space, the actual
The
cubic
the,
feet
the
they don't
bank
have.
itself is running out of space to hold the money because it's devaluing so quickly.
Yeah.
Just absolutely tragic. And I looked. There used to be really good websites to track local Bitcoin volume.
Hmm.
Local Bitcoins, for those unaware, is like this peer-to-peer OTC marketplace. And there used to be better places to track that that don't seem to be operational anymore. It's probably not as popular anymore, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But they used to break down like by country where the Bitcoin volume was, which is
Hmm.
super cool. So I checked and like it is up in Argentina still. I think it's rising. Um,
Necessity is the mother of
yeah,
invention, right? And strife is probably the father of adoption. You know what I mean? So if you have necessity and strife at the same time, then someone invents something and people use it, and
yeah.
it's a very straightforward process. Those two elements add for a quick marriage into, I would say, nationwide or definitely regional adoption for something, because it's like, what are your choices?
Right.
Your choices are to trust a bank, you can't trust a money, you can't, and then it's like at some point the nihilism creeps in, and you say, you know what, I'm willing to take a risk, because I'd rather just go through door number two, because I know what door number one is and I don't want it. Like I just, it's like, oh, there's a lion behind door number one, there's a mystery behind door number two. It's like, well, a lion's gonna eat me. Like I'm,
Yeah, I mean, at some point, everybody reaches their boiling point,
mhm.
which is a great show on MTV a while back.
Boiling point, yeah. The
um,
glasses with the, yeah,
but
yeah.
anyway, yeah, everybody reaches their point where like, you know what, enough's enough. And in Argentina's case, it's been, inflation here is bad, but over there, it's been years and years and years of just
Mhm.
runaway inflation, and it's just gotten insane over there. So anyway, that's all you have for this week, I think.
Yeah, I think that's it. But
See us out here.
see us out. Yeah, okay. So it's a wild world out there. Bitcoin in all of the noise of the universe is a great way to determine what direction you're heading. Are you accumulating more Bitcoin or not? Right? And if the answer is yes, you're accumulating more Bitcoin, you're probably doing the right thing in your life, whatever that is, financially.
Well, even just
Uh,
learning about, you don't need to be buying necessarily, but have an open mind. It's very generational. I've noticed with just interactions with people. The older people will say never, I won't touch that. It's going to zero. And the younger people are just like they have an open mind, right? They want to think about things differently. They see that it's stronger, better, faster, whatever than traditional rails. And yeah, so have an open mind. Do your own research.
do your own research, and the more you know, the more confidence you can take each step with in your life. So that's how we're gonna end it today. Josh, thank you so much for joining me on the Bitcoin Bottom Line. And as always, you can follow us, tag us, DM us, ask us how our trades are going. Right? I always like those ones; those are good. And we will see you on the internet.